formal binding decisions, except potentially to give direction to staff. Purpose is really for discussion. We'll have an opportunity for public comment on after each of our items, and also at the very beginning, at the very end of the meeting, if anybody would like to comment. Before we jump into our agenda and first public comment, I'll just comment, and Chris, you can correct me if something has changed here, but there was a request from staff that we let the planners go first, and that way they can leave, rather than sandwiching them between two lengthy discussions from Public Works. I assume, Chris, that's still your suggestion and request? Looks like?
Yes, Mayor and Council, if that's possible. And Debbie, to her credit, was trying to build some chips for the future. So she actually was the one this morning that said, why did you maybe we shouldn't sandwich them in the middle. And she'll use that in the future to lobby to be first on an agenda. But we appreciate that. Planning appreciates that. So if you're inclined to do that, I think that would make some sense.
Okay, thank you. And Chris and council members, our code provision 2-226C for work sessions is a little different from our regular agenda. It says the work sessions shall be in informal meetings conducted by the mayor, who may alter the agenda during the meeting based upon the consensus of those present. So I don't know that we need a formal meeting. We'll just make that change unless there's significant disagreement from members of the council. Okay, don't see any, so that's what we'll do. Before we jump into the first item, which I guess will be our budget presentation by planning, we'll just ask if there's any public comment, and that may be on anything on our agenda or not on our agenda. If so, please come forward. Just ask that you tell us your name and your address and keep your comments to 3 minutes. And Chris, can you just make sure the microphone is on there? Does that...
Hello.
Okay, yes. Great, thanks.
Hi, my name is Katie Harrison. Do you need me to spell my name? Okay, 2901 6th Avenue South. I don't know if I have enough copies, but I brought something for you all. I have 9 of them. Okay. But everyone should probably have most of that. So I sent an email like last week regarding the unhoused situation here in Billings. It seems, so I have a business downtown, like right in the heart of downtown. And as you'll see, like on page 2 of that packet that I gave you guys, well, technically page 3, there's going to be 3 photos of one gentleman in particular who I see on a daily basis outside of my business. And I'm not bringing this to your attention to complain and say, oh, homeless people are disgusting and dirty and get them away. I'm saying we are not taking care of our citizens. I look at the ambulances and the police cars alternately who are picking this one individual up on a weekly basis. I'm not going to exaggerate and say daily, but sometimes it's a daily basis. You guys can pull the numbers and find out how much that's costing us. If we want to just talk on financial terms, let's talk on financial terms. I only got one response. That was from Tom Roopsis, and he did address our lean budget. Well, how much money is this costing us? For the ambulances, the police cars, the jail, the hearings. I know there's hearings because this gentleman in particular was actually having a hearing when I had one of my order of protection cases, and I had to sit through hearing his criminal charges, which essentially are being homeless. How much is this costing our city? If we have a lean budget, we need to start rethinking how we are treating people. Let's use the money that we do have from the safety mill levy that was just talked about in the Gazette on the front page today, coincidentally. So I get it, money's an issue, but this is costing us money. So maybe we can start reallocating money to help people. This is a mental health issue. This is not a crime issue. Jails and the money we're putting into expanding prisons, why on earth is that money not being put towards mental health? We know that that's the root of this crisis. okay? If we get people the help they need, guess what? They don't need to commit these crimes. They're desperate. I'm a business owner. It makes me sad. And I go out there every time I see him, I give him coffee, I give him water before I call the ambulance. So we can put our heads together. Let's just do better by the unhoused and the mentally unwell. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment today? Okay, we'll close the public comment and move into our first item, which is our planning budget presentation. Looks like Laura is here with us. I'll just remind council, the budget book planning is at page 125. And if you make a reference to specific line items or dollar amounts, it might be helpful to try to refer to a specific page number so the rest of us can follow along if possible. But with that, I'll hand it to Laura.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, Laura Maddox, I'm the Transportation Planning Coordinator for the City County Planning Department Division and for the MPO. We're pleased to be here tonight to talk to you about the Planning and Community Services budget. You will see many of the elements are in your book, and if you want to follow along with your narrative, we'll go from there and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can, or we'll make sure that we get the answers and bring it back to you. There we go. So just some introductions very quickly, since I'm normally not here in attendance for the budget meeting, but am here tonight. Wyeth, of course, is our director, and I would like to also introduce Tina Hoger, who's our code enforcement manager, Brenda Beckett from Community Development, and I'm very happy to announce that Anna Vickers will be our new Planning Division Manager starting June 3rd. Anna comes from us from IMEG Consulting. She's been working in the planning field for 9 years, moved here from Missoula 2 years ago to handle the Billings office here. She's been a land use planner and a senior planner and managing their planning division for their company. So we're really excited to have her start. Can't tell you how excited I am to have her start. We're looking forward to having her here, and we'll make sure that we get her to the first council meeting after she starts so she can formally meet you all. Just a department overview with planning, code enforcement, and community development. One thing is I did want to mention that planning is also a county planning department, so we do also work with the county on their planning issues, zoning, subdivision, those types of items. We have quite a few services that all three divisions handle. Obviously, planning, we have the MPO, which is a large portion of our funding that we receive every year through federal funds for planning. We do annexations, and we have 11 boards and commissions that the planning division oversees, including historic preservation. Code enforcement, they also have many duties as well. As you know, they're under the public safety mill levy for implementation. They oversee 22 codes, have a lot of public safety partners, and work with the neighborhood stability, the property cleanups, graffiti, and those types of things. We also have a nationally recognized AmeriCorps Vista program that we're very happy about. And we also have the community development, the first-time home buyer, housing development, neighborhood stabilization, and of course the federal funds. What's not listed here that I did want to mention is that Wyeth also oversees the urban renewal districts as part of his duties, as well as he assists the 8 neighborhood task forces with their activities. So he helps with mailings and helps meet with them and helps run their organizations. That accounts for part of his time as well. Just a few stats from last year. The community development CV funds for parks received $1.2 million, 12 projects for 3 parks, and we'll get into that a little bit later, kind of some of those lists of that. Code enforcement case activity, 4,700 cases with 5,300 inspections. Very busy year. We had 8 annexations that came in. One of those was the Air National Guard, which just broke ground recently. We had zone change, 26 zone changes. One was a planned neighborhood development that came in. Master site plan reviews, 7 residential, 3 commercial. One of the best developed master plan we received was a Cardwell Ranch apartment north of Will James, very well designed, that's going in. And the commercial development at Miller Crossing, where the Cabela's in that urban renewal district, we've seen quite a bit of influx of commercial development there. We continually try to reach out and make sure that we have a good social media presence and try to gain followers and use that as much as possible. And we also have an active transportation intern that has been doing a lot of great outreach for us. She's been really great. I have her every month it's a new safety. So this month is motorcycle safety. So I've been having her go in and do a lot of public and social media on motorcycle safety to be aware that they're there and those types of things. So we've been very busy and doing a lot of great stuff. This next slide, we just wanted to demonstrate some of the projects they're working on and how they fit with some of the council goals and strategies under public safety, core infrastructure, built environment, and parks and investment. I don't want to read all these to you. You can see where those are, and we can answer any questions you might have. Obviously, we're looking forward to moving forward with the neighborhood plan updates as we move forward. Neighborhood plans, the park investments. We do have a lot on our plate that I know the council would like us to address, and with this budget that will help us do that. With that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Andy to address the financial side of things.
And as Andy's heading that way, a stat I'd like to just put on your minds, it's not technically a part of the planning office, but it frankly is there's a direct linkage, which is occupancy permits out of the building division. So in 2023, 1,122 occupancy permits granted between single-family houses, townhouses, and apartments. So, that's work that takes several years to get to that point, but that's a good 50% higher than the prior several years. So indications of continued kind of pressure of growth in our community in that stage. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So I've been asked to present the next couple slides here in lieu of Wyeth's absence. So as you can see, the planning division, which again includes planning, community development, code enforcement, is largely funded by federal grants. This year, this also includes the Transportation Alternative Plan or program funds for the Stagecoach Trail, the MPO for planning, and then the HUD funds for community development as well. The next largest portion is the general fund, and this number, the $2 million up there, that includes the kind of net general fund contribution for code enforcement, as well as about $23,000 of assessments that the code enforcement charges typically for weed abatement. And then the rest actually the general fund also, just so you're aware, includes transfers to planning, $200,000 for neighborhood growth policy, yep. And then there's about $60,000 or $70,000 to help cover some of the occupancy rent costs for community development in there as well. And then there are some county planning taxes that show up here as well as property taxes. The next slide here has, I thought we broke that out. Okay. It shows by department. Again, the planning one is largely inflated because that shows the $5 million for the Stagecoach Trail. Typically, that's not part of the planning department. It's not a $7 million budget on an annual basis. But here, just to kind of represent that the majority of planning and community development comes from federal funds, code enforcement, our local general fund.
So
I recommend we wait if we can, but if it's just a simple little factual thing, sure.
Yeah, repeat that, where that $4.5 million from
For transportation alternatives?
Stagecoach.
Yeah, it's showing up as federal grant revenue, the bright green under planning.
Okay, where's the match there in that?
The local match is from so this is just the revenue side, what's coming into the city. So the match actually isn't in any of these because that's coming out of the general fund and into the trails program.
And Andy, the only correction there is maybe the TrailNet contribution donation in the red. That might go toward the
Yeah, that
match.
should be in there as well, yes.
So that $220,000, but that was about 100 from them, so I'm not sure what the other 100 is, but
Yeah,
hope that second grant maybe.
I can look and see what that is, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the stacked chart that you have on that previous one, Andy, and apologize that we uploaded the wrong one. We split out the bike path trail, or is that a later?
No, it's not. We can send that out to break it out, to really show the planning department or planning division, the bike path, kind of stagecoach trail project, and then community development and code enforcement. So. It's in our presentation. Oh, all right, great. The wrong one just got added to the server, so I'm glad. Look at your, your attachment has the right one. Oh,
And you'll
great.
see
I bet this has the right.
the bike path trail is a little north of 5 million, whereas the planning office is a little south of 2 million. So after going through this last week at staff, Andy saw that there was a better way to show that. So apparently that's what's in your packet material.
Okay. Thank you. And then this is the expenditure side, which does not include Stagecoach Trail. And the only reason we didn't include it here was we wanted to represent, like, what is the planning department function kind of on a normal annual basis. Obviously, we noted in there's 5.5 million that's not included for Stagecoach Trail, but typically you're covering O&M and personal services for the department. There is transfer out there, and that's to help fund vehicle replacement, is that correct? Yeah, the contribution towards the equipment replacement plan to help fund vehicle replacement. I think that's it for the financials.
Thank you. Apologize, we've had so many different versions of our presentation. Of course, I grabbed the wrong one. Just a few challenges that's facing the department. Of course, we have the big move coming up. One of the challenges we're seeing as the Miller building has sold to the county, we have to be out by September 1st. With the logistics of getting our occupancy for the new building, we're going to have to do some creative locations to provide still walk-in services and still provide staffing. Planning some of our other challenges we have is with the new Senate bill and some directions from City Council. We have a lot of long-range planning projects that we need to get underway, specifically the growth policy. We really need to get started on that one. So I would imagine probably in a few weeks, hopefully, we'll be starting to get that underway, as well as the Inner Belt Loop area plan. MDT is proposing to do a Highway 3 corridor study update this fall. We want to make sure that we work with them very closely on that update as we do an Inner Belt Loop land use study for that area. We are trying to continually update neighborhood plans. We haven't been able to do that for quite a while with the influx of the general funds to do the growth policy and the Inner Belt Loop. Those are getting going, but we have neighborhood plans that are out to date. And right now we're working on the West End and the Heights neighborhood plan. But if we want to do more, we need to look at staffing versus consulting charges and how we work through that. And then, as I mentioned, Senate Bill 382 for community development. Obviously, it's always kind of uncertain with the HUD funding, how it's going to continue moving forward. Having staffing to handle those grants with all the technicalities that come through with the HUD, different HUD programs, and the long-term service agility for that division. Code enforcement, they are very busy and they are in need of an additional commercial code officer. He's extremely busy and they could definitely use additional ones. I will look to my counterparts to make sure I hit. Okay. And with that, we're all here to answer your questions and to help clarify anything we need to.
Great. Okay, let's start with Councilmember Boyette and we'll just go that direction.
Thank you, Mayor. This, Laura, this Senate Bill 382 looks like it's a giant monster ready to bite us. Do you have an adequate staff, or do you need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people? What is your estimates going forward with this, if any?
I think we are definitely looking at using consulting services due to the growth policy that will meet the intent of the new Montana Land Use Planning Act. That will be our first step. So we have consulting services for that in line. Although we've been hearing that some of those projects out of Helena are coming in double what, we have proposed for this. We did request an additional $30,000 from community development up at the state to offset some of the housing analysis for that. So right now we're at a $230,000 budget. We're hearing some of those plans coming in at $500,000. But I think one thing we have going for us is we're doing a very large West End neighborhood plan update, and we're doing a very large Heights neighborhood plan update. Those two pieces we are working through as if they are part of the new Land Use Act. So we are developing those in accordance with that can feed into the growth policy. So I think we're okay for our part of it. Moving forward, though, I think we will need to look, and I think that was in our needs document that was attached to your budget, over the next few years of adding additional senior staff. We're looking at a pretty significant retirement probably next year of one of our senior staff members that we're going to have to fill, as well as to potentially add another long-range planner or senior planner. So to get through at least the growth policy, I think we're okay. But if we want to continue moving forward with updating our neighborhood plans, we're going to need more additional staff to help do that because we're pretty thin. We're very shallow staff. We have very good senior staff, and we have a very good Planner One team that handles our permitting and upfront work. But we really could use additional senior staff level to help with some of these long-range plans.
Could I add, Deputy Mayor and Deputy Mayor? I know Wyeth would, if he's able to be listening. So they had proposed an additional planner this year. As Andy and I worked to balance the budget, that was one of the things we cut in order to get the budget balanced. So there is a need ultimately, but as Laura said, we feel we can get through this year, but it certainly adds to the challenge relative to meeting the community's expectation on two very significant neighborhood plans and ultimately complying with state statute by 2026, having that growth plan document done. So the request was there. It didn't fit into the balanced budget. There's backup information there if you want anything between now and June 10th. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Rupsis, Councilmember Shaw.
So can you just help me understand a little bit? When you say we have $230,000 for consultant services, why not hire another person to do that with that money instead?
Well, I think we weren't looking at hiring another staff when we initially came to the city council asking for that general fund allocation to meet the intent of the new Land Use Planning Act. And we knew we were going to be under a time constraint. Trying to hire somebody at this time and getting them on board and up to speed on what we would need to do, I think would be very difficult for us to continue moving forward and meet the deadline that we're going to have to meet with the Land Use Act. In the future, maybe it's something that can move forward. I would mention that a lot of our staff, a percentage of their salary is paid through our MPO. This position that we're proposing that we would present to MDT would also be, potentially up to 30% of their salary be paid through the MPO. But I think that's probably one of the main reasons is because of the timing issue that trying to onboard a staff member at this time it'd be very difficult for us to do.
Gotcha, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Gillett? Okay. Councilmember Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure who can answer this, but a couple of questions about, I'm looking at the staffing. It says code enforcement was requesting the full-time officer 2, but when I look at the code enforcement officer 2, it's not increasing at all. So that's one question about the personnel changes. Can you explain why it's requested, but it's not showing?
Can you remind me, Tina, was that in the proposed budget so there again, that was a balancing of the budget. So that's what came from the department, but ultimately when we had to fit revenues with expenditures, then the position was removed and we discussed, okay, can we go another year without that second commercial code enforcement person? Tina would love to add that sooner rather than later, but it's a matter of resources.
Okay. And then the other shift in the staff that I see from 24 to 25 in here is you're removing all the administrative support positions, which is totals to 1 FTE, and you're adding it to the planner 2. Is that still correct?
So the removal of that administrative assistant help was a joint member that we had that sat up front at our counter that was paid by building, code, and planning, and that was to handle the walk-in traffic and to provide those types of support. However, with the move to the new building, that position is no longer needed, and so that's the reason it was eliminated.
So will that, and again, I'm not sure where you're at in the new building, so you're saying that there won't be any need for any other administrative type of position to direct people to your department or do what they were doing over the Miller building?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Owen is with us online. Councilmember Owen, did you have anything?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just had an additional kind of a follow-up question about adding the second position for the commercial code enforcement. Is that a position that can be partly funded through the fees that are paid? Or is that strictly from our general fund budget in order to fund that position? Thank you.
Councilmember Joy, Mayor, Council, it's primarily a general funded position. I mean, we don't, the fee structure there or the fine structure isn't something that I recall significant enough that we're covering FTE cost with it, though we try to recoup every dollar we can that we put out for cleanups and things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just make a couple comments. First, going forward, because there is clearly thin staffing here, it would be interesting to know how we stack up against other communities in Montana or peer communities of our size in this region in the future. It's not going to do it at this stage, I would think, but I just think that'd be interesting. And also maybe just on a per capita basis, whatever kind of metrics might allow us to get a sense for where we stand there. And then the other thing is just, I do appreciate Chris knowing what is, not just what's in the budget, but what's not in the budget, specifically what's been requested by staff, but not granted at your level, because otherwise the public or even we might think 100% of what's been requested by staff is in the budget. And of course, that's not the case at all. You've made some difficult choices before it even gets to this point, and that could be useful information. I don't know quite how to process that in the future, but I can see that that could be helpful. So those are comments. Councilmember Kennedy, anything?
Chris, for the Community Development Block Grant Program, I see there are 4.5 positions. They wanted another position for this year
Yes, that was in the request.
in here.
Correct.
Okay. Would that come out, if they asked for it, would it come out of the federal grant?
Brenda, could you help me kind of with how the logistics of that side works?
Sure. We asked for a full-time position because of our struggle with all of the HUD changes recently. They've changed just about every regulation they have. And we don't have anybody to do records management and that kind of general office work for all of the grant programs. We have had a half-time position budgeted in our budget since it was last filled, and I'm thinking 2005. We just don't have enough federal funding to employ that person. So we have actually had the same 4 staff member pattern since about 2005, even though with the new home ARP and CDBG CV funding, we are managing 3 times the funds. So
you have a half-time position in there.
in our current budget.
But no one's in that position.
Right, because we can't fund it. And so we asked if we could have a full-time grants technician position for $65,000, and that was not able to be fit in the budget.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Espenlater.
In honor of Public Works Week, I traded in my picket signs for pom-poms this week, so no questions from me.
They appreciate it. Councilmember Tisdale, good. And we start with Councilmember Boyette. We'll go to public comment unless there's any other questions by staff. Okay, is there any other public comment on the planning portion of the budget presentation? If so, please come to the podium. No one is coming forward, so we'll close the public comment period on the planning budget. Back to council. We'll press along unless there's general discussion, further questions, direction for staff, anything along those lines. Okay, Councilmember Gillett.
Just real quick, as we were talking about additional staff versus consultants, we did discuss in the budget committee that we're certainly open to, in future years, bringing more of the staff in helps build our own capacity and is, I think it could stretch our budget further too. So let's maybe plan for that for next year. I understand, what you're up against. Thanks for the explanation, but definitely very open to that. So encourage it.
Okay, thank you. And before I pass it to Councilmember Kennedy, I'll just comment that imagine if the legislature in the state of Montana, which is a pretty small place, passed a law that said every city of the top 10 biggest cities or something has to find a couple consultants, planning consultants over the next couple of years. Where are they going to come from? They're all going to be needed. And so this is going to be a really a good time to be a private planning consultant. I think all of our staff are going to leave so they can charge twice. We're going to have to look out of state. We're going to have to do something. It'll be interesting to see how it works out. Councilmember Kennedy?
Mayor, let's not give the legislature any ideas.
You've already gone there.
I want to go back to community development and home grants. Brenda, who funds the Section 8 housing?
That would be HUD, but it is actually not given to the city to manage.
That's not given to the city?
Section 8 housing funds? No, sir.
Yes.
No.
How do we request to HUD to bring up the Section 8 funding so we can actually, this council has talked about affordable housing over and over again. Section 8 is so low that they're giving money back for Section 8. And the real problem with that is Missoula asked and did get their Section 8 funding up. How do we, as the city, go about trying to have that done to really start addressing some of the affordable housing issue?
I think that you would have to work through Homefront, our affordable housing partners, and they're also housing developers. They manage Section 8. And the housing dollars that come into the city are very complex. So forgive me to Homefront and to HRDC if I get it wrong, but I also think that HRDC District 7 may also receive some kind of additional rental assistance to give out, even though it's not very much funding. So I would start with those two organizations and ask them what their experience is and how they can support that kind of request. My understanding is we don't have enough units, and so even if you have a Section 8 voucher in your hand, you're having a very difficult time finding a unit that will qualify and landlords that'll rent to you. So I think there's a bit of a disconnect between having more vouchers and being able to use them. At least that's from my my experience.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. I would like to come in and talk to you on that.
Sure.
Because that's something that we've put as a priority.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. Can we hear from Tina regarding this commercial code enforcement officer that we're not approving on this budget, and what the cities are going to be missing out on that, and then approximately what the cost is that was cut to make, of that position?
The cost of the position? Yeah. I would defer to Andy on that, but basically it would just be a duplication of the current one that I have because he works the entire city. He has the entire east to west. If I could have two of him, we could probably service our commercial citizens a lot better. We could be more on top of our graffiti abatements. He handles sign code, all business licensing, short-term rentals, sober living homes, all of those things that are the marijuana licensing. He handles all of those things, one person. So if I had two of him, we could do it better. We're kind of,
We're going to give a number when you're done.
we're staying sort of on top of it because he's a very hard worker. But if I had two of him, I could probably ease some of his caseload for him.
Okay, so rather than just easing caseload, what is the city missing out then? What are you talking about?
Doing it better.
Doing it better?
Yes,
But you're
that's
talking about
basically-
graffiti not being handled or abated? What type of things are taking extra long? How much sooner can things get done if you
It
have
would
to?
be much quicker. I mean, he's very good at what he does, but, I mean, I'm opening cases now for graffiti cases because we're just so overloaded. So I'm handling a caseload to help support him. There's a lot of things on the commercial end, and then with new ordinances and new rules, that fall under commercial, that basically is where it's gonna lie for now, is under his job title. So we can do some things kind of well, but if we had another one, we would be probably getting ahead of it.
Mayor, one more question. I'll
Please.
hear from Andy. How much time is spent on the marijuana enforcement? Because I don't think we have very many in the city, so how much time is
We
actually?
only have one that's licensed, but we do have issues that come up. Like, we are currently working with the city attorney's office on some new issues that have arisen, because with any ordinance or any rule, people will find a workaround. So now we have to deal with that. So that takes time as well. So he gets pulled into that, I get pulled into that, so that we can enforce it properly and come up with a good plan.
Okay, thank you. And Andy?
The cost side of that, all in on the individual, about 91,000, add a vehicle to that, ERP, so roughly around 10 a year, or I'm sorry, 100,000 a year between the individual and the equipment.
Okay, and then, Andy, is any of the marijuana money going to support the code enforcement position since they're handling that portion of it?
Do you mean the marijuana tax or the?
Tax, right.
No.
It's not.
Nope, nothing's going into the general fund for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Tina, sorry. Back. And council members, I'm looking at the budget for the new graffiti fund, page 136. On the revenue side, there's no general fund money.
No.
That goes into that. We've created a fund with no funding.
But there is funding going in.
Well, if we're fortunate to get some donations.
We have been.
And, but what about in future years, and is that enough? Shouldn't we be incentivize private donations by having some general fund money go into a fund that we've created?
I'm not going to say no to that, but also because this did happen towards the end of this fiscal year, I was just grateful to get it started. You were generous enough to get us started. And actually, Todd, my commercial officer, has been doing quite a bit of, he knows a lot of people in town, been a businessman for many years before he started working for the city, so he has contacts there. Folks are very willing to donate and have been. You'll see that next Tuesday. And then I just sat with Zach over at BCF, and we've come up with a plan for a possible annual donation through his agency. So we're getting some tread on it. So I'm hoping that it can be a self-sustaining fund for rewards and for materials that we need and supplies. Who knows what it'll grow into, but I'm just grateful that it got started.
Okay, thank you. I, for one, be open, we're not talking $100,000, but a few $1,000s to, if nothing else, a sign of good faith with the rest of the community. But, okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anything else for Tina or planning staff? Councilor Bernice?
Mayor, I guess this is more comment to staff and the budget, and my concern is we have code enforcement doing the marijuana enforcement and doing these kind of things, and yet we have a marijuana tax that we're not assessing any of that money towards that department. And it's not going to probably pay for a full-time position, but I would think that we would like to, maybe if it doesn't happen this budget, next budget, take a look at how much time and money can be carved out. It's going to be a small amount out of the marijuana tax money to help code enforcement fund that, and then general fund would have to come back with some additional to help with the rest of that. But I think we should place that money where it's being used. So that's just my request, and and thought. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, it looks like that's all, so we will call that a wrap on the planning department budget and turn it over to Public Works on their stormwater program. Item number 1. And it looks like that may be a Debbie,
Tyler's gonna.
Jennifer tag team.
Wanna get it?
Tyler,
Yeah, grab it. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I know the time you've eagerly been waiting. I'm sorry we had to delay you guys a few minutes for this, but stormwater utility, we have talked, or stormwater program, we have talked to you guys several times about this over the past couple of years. We've worked really hard to create what we think is the best program to be able to have a responsible storm program. These are big numbers. We're well aware that this is an ask that's significant. We don't come very often and want to completely redo a project. A lot of times we're talking about cost of living increases or small consumer price index increases. This is a new program. It's a new way to approach stormwater because the way that the city's historically done it has not been sustainable. It's getting us in trouble, and that's where we need to start looking at this differently. So with that, Tyler Westrop's going to do the majority of the presentation. Jennifer and I will be here to answer any questions, and he's going to get going.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to talk about stormwater program today. We last met last October to give an update on the progress then, and since then, staff has continued to develop the program and come up with revised numbers. So I'm supported today by Director Melling and Deputy Director Duray. Any questions, could ask any one of us. So hoping to talk today about just the review of the stormwater components that we discussed last October, the systems development fees, the rate structure model, and the level of service of the corresponding rates. I also want to talk about the boards and the groups that we've outreached to and where we're going next. I don't know where to point this.
Did we just cut it off?
Thank you. All right, thanks. So where have we been so far? This is our sixth time, or actually, I'm sorry, our sixth time through council. We were at the work session in June of 21, budget and finance in 23, and in July and August. Council work session in October, budget and finance last week, and we're here tonight at the work session to discuss this program. Throughout this process, we have met as an advisory committee, which Councilmember Gulick is a member of, 8 times over the past 15 months. And we have reached out to the boards you see there on the right-hand side of the screen, boards, task force, and various groups. Next slide, please. So what we talked about last October was the systems development fee, and that is really a one-time charge, new growth paying for growth. At that time, council endorsed that idea. This chart here is slightly outdated, but we left it in here as an example of the relative amount of those rates relative to the water and sewer SDFs, which are currently in place. Currently, there's water and sewer SDFs. There is not a current stormwater SDF. So what did council decide last October? That was to do SDFs. That was a process that the city should undertake, and so we are refining that analysis. We were looking at a project by project evaluation to see the percent vacant analysis and exactly how much of that new growth project actually serves new growth. That's an ongoing process, and we plan to, once we come up with the final number, the final rate plan, bring that forth back through the advisory committee meeting and to the various interest groups, the home builders being one of them, as the mayor mentioned last October. And then we'll be ready for either a mid-year rate increase or possibly just wait one full year and then incorporate it in the fiscal year 1 year from now. The next thing that we talked about last October was a change in rate methodology. The chart on the left is how we currently assess stormwater rates. That is based upon the fee structure developed in 1977, which was gross lot area and zoning jurisdiction. We have since changed that, or are planning to change that, to the equivalent residential unit, to where we measure up everybody's impervious surface, find the average residential value, and assign a proportionate amount to the commercial properties. To do that, we measured up every property. When we met last October, we had 80% confidence level data. We since, after council's direction and endorsement at that meeting, we were able to secure 97% level data. And this is kind of a snapshot of what that data looks like. So when we looked at the numbers, what does that mean for us? So we refined the estimate. In the previous data assumption where we were 80% confidence data, we assumed that one ERU was equal to 2,600. That has since changed to 3,750. However, there was also more impervious surface measured with the higher accuracy data. So the relative value of that ERU remained largely unchanged, almost negligibly unchanged. We have just over 33,000 residential accounts that we will apply this to, 5,200 commercial accounts, and then a number of centrally assessed properties that we have to spend some time making sure that we've coordinated and got those people captured. Centrally assessed are your utility companies, railroad type properties. And then we also had to verify all the duplex, mobile homes, condos, and vacant properties just to make sure that they receive accurate assessments. It was quite the work between our IT department and our administration, so I want to share that on there. The slide on the right, Councilmember Shaw, you brought this up in last October. This was a slide that was in a memo. It was not presented in the presentation because we weren't exactly confident of the data. Turns out we were right. The existing system, or the existing collection structure, it very closely matches the proposed, and that is 60% of our revenue will come from commercial property, 40% will come from residential property. It's actually 63-37, but for slide purposes. So what did council direct us to do last October? And that's to move to this impervious surface rate methodology. And so that's what we're doing. We are testing the rate model for gaps, errors, and omissions, and making sure that all the billing is correct. And we do plan to bring a resolution forth on June 10th at that business meeting. The next topic that maybe had a little larger discussion was the level of service and the corresponding rate matrix associated with it. This was the matrix that was presented last October. It had 4 columns. The Budget and Finance Committee did request a particular level of service package, which had a mid-year citywide capital completion in between the best practice and proactive level timeframes. That was the rate profile that was associated with that. With each of those level of service packages, the yellow dashed line was the Budget and Finance Committee's recommendation. Once we got a chance to look through and continue our data crunching and our evaluation numbers, we did refine our citywide capital needs. We actually reduced that number by about $20 million by thinking of how projects would actually be completed. In the process, since we've been working on this for a few years, we've actually completed a project, which knocked $4 million off the list. We spoke to the Montana Department of Transportation, and they agreed to complete a project that we had on our list. So in doing that, we knocked down that capital and generated a new rate profile. And you can, the numbers, fiscal year 33, 9 years from now, those are generally $1 to 75 cents less. And that's per month per ERU. To address another question that came up in the October meeting is how much revenue does this mean? The area under the curve, whatever curve we select, is the revenue. That's broken down by year, by fiscal year. The expected monthly ERU is shown in the middle column, and how much revenue that generates is shown on the right. During the advisory committee process, we did discuss presenting an alternative rate profile. That is the blue line there. That is just a fixed 15% per year rate increase. It's a parabolic curve because it's per year. What that generates, though, is lost revenue. The area between whatever the Budget and Finance Committee's yellow dash line rate profile and this hypothetical blue line rate profile equals your lost revenue. And that's about $13 to $15 million of lost revenue. What that means is we're not able to complete the projects as fast as we need to keep up with inflation, and it extends our time period to complete our services. And on that, when that profile was discussed at the Budget and Finance Committee last Wednesday, it was generally not considered to be a good idea. So how are we breaking down our funding? This is the current 24 budget. Of the $5.7 million that we generate, 2.7 is capital, 2 million is O&M, 1 million is debt service. With the Budget and Finance Committee's yellow dash line profile, these are the numbers anticipated. Fiscal year 25, we're at 3.9 million, 2.4, and 1.2 million. In fiscal year 33, those changed to 10, 9, 6, 2, and 2. And that capital, that is our water quality, that is our true capital projects, and I'm losing track of one, but flood mitigation, sorry. So how does the stormwater rate to the other public works utilities? This is the stacked bar approach that council did endorse or this March, I believe, switching stormwater from the property tax statements to the monthly utility bill. So these are monthly utility bill equivalents. Currently, stormwater is about $5 per month. And with the Budget and Finance Committee's recommended profile, that would move to $6.68 per month. And that is how it compares to the other utilities that Public Works provides. And that's about 7% of what your utility bill will be. So what did council decide last October? That was to keep going forward with the Budget and Finance Committee's rate profile. And that's now, I guess, a new rate profile based upon some updated information. And staff is continuing to refine the numbers, finish out our rate study that will be presented at that time of the June 10th business meeting. So in terms of schedule, upcoming schedule, that is that June 10th business meeting where the updated rate structure and updated rates will be presented. Implementation, fiscal year 25, July 1st. And then we have an opportunity of when to enact system development fees. We could do a mid-year system development fee in action, or we could just wait one full year and come up at a more normal budget cycle time. So, and that would come back through the Budget and Finance Committee, through the work session, through council. Where are we going here shortly? Shameless plug, Public Works Week is this week. So they bought me a tie for that. They did not buy me a tie for that. I got a hat. May 22nd, we're at the water plant. We'll have a booth there. I will be there handing out things for stormwater people. I'll be manning a booth if you want to talk about stormwater, educating the public. May 23rd at the Operations Center down on Midland. The library, we have community outreach scheduled for the 28th and 29th. Again, it'll be a presentation, most likely by me, talk about these stormwater changes and just engaging the public. So with that, I know that was kind of a quick presentation. Thank you very much. I'm here for questions, as is Director Melling and Deputy Director Dre.
Very good. Thank you, Tyler. Very well put together, everything, PowerPoint. Appreciate you and your team's job on this. So over the last 3 years, I guess it is. Council, where would you like to start? Do we have some questions? I have one just to get us started. On the issue of the fees, fee increase, the ERUs, equivalent residential unit, it's just a flat rate based on the averages you've determined. But the commercial rate will be more fine-tuned based on actual measurements, as I understand it. So the question is, how does that impact within that commercial class newer properties versus older properties, if at all? And here's the significance of the reason for the question. By just measuring impervious space, that's a factor in how much water goes in the stormwater system, but it's not the only factor. You may generate a lot of stormwater on your property because you have a lot of impervious surface, but you may retain it and you may deal with it because you've got a lot of other vacant land, for example. 20 years ago, whenever we adopted much stricter stormwater retention regulations, we have a whole generation of commercial properties that have now been developed to largely retain their property and not add as much to the stormwater system. And yet we've got a lot of legacy properties that was never a consideration, and are presumably putting a lot more into the system. So is there a recognition of how that differential between older properties and newer properties that are already retaining are going to be handled in that measurement on the commercial side for the rate structure?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. To answer that, so at this current stage, no. The stormwater system that we think of it is not just the pipes, it's the roads. It is our permit with DEQ, is our water quality desires, is our flood mitigations at the river. And whether a business mitigates that, every drop of water on site, they still have employees and customers that access every other part of our storm system. So at this time, no, we don't differentiate between that. In the last week's Budget and Finance Committee, Councilmember Rups has brought up kind of an idea of complexities to the rate structure, various opportunities to have adjusted rates for people that developed a long time ago or people that develop now, various size homes, communities that have, we're stepping into a new rate structure, new rate process. Communities that have stepped, walked, and are running down the road with theirs, they do have levels of complexity that they can build in over time. At this stage, we just measured up people's impervious surface and are choosing that way. And it's really similar to their current rate structure in that they don't get a different rate if you develop now versus 40 years ago. But there are levels of complexity that you can build in once you have this level of data that we've never had before.
Okay, that answers the question. Thank you. We can go down here. Councilmember Kennedy.
One of the things when we changed to put to bill on the monthly bill, it's not a tax, so it's just a fee, and we put that in. But a lot of people said it's just easier for you then to raise that. Is there a plan with the stormwater and the changes in the next year or so to start explaining to people what the costs are? I have read through all of this and saw that it's there's a lot of deferred maintenance. It's been pushed off for years. So if people are going to pay some more money, what are they going to see out of it? And is there some type of PR proposal to go out and actually explain to people?
Yeah, so, thank you, Councilmember. So the next week is a great opportunity. People get 2 opportunities to come visit us and hear about this. The following week we'll be at the library at 2 separate events. Deputy Director DeRay did reach out to all those task force groups that I showed there and spoke about this. We feel like through the advisory committee process, through these meetings, through the public meetings that we've had, through our Facebook and social media posts, inviting people to outreach to us, that we have captured that.
Go ahead.
Mayor, a follow-up. You have probably the best mail service in town, and a bill goes out to everyone. That's a real opportunity to get something in every month and explain these things to them. And I have a lot of people asking the question on the West End stormwater too. Can you use that system and put a flyer in, explain a few other things to them?
Yes, Councilmember, thank you. In the memo that you received, Appendix A, I believe there was a communication plan, and that communication plan did contemplate sending out a pamphlet or a sheet within the monthly utility bill, because that is a great source of information. I personally don't check my bill. I use it all online, but it'll also be posted there as well. So yes, that was a part of the communication plan. I guess I didn't speak enough to that. We developed a communication plan for how to reach out to the public and get this information to them, and an insert into the monthly utility bill was one of those.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councilmember Ashlander, anything? Pom-poms. Councilmember Tiswell. No, good, thank you. Councilmember Boyett, Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Mayor. Tyler, I'm going to apologize in advance because I should have given this feedback last week when we talked. I'm a little bit concerned that we're using the term level of service when we're really talking about a schedule of projects, right? And that's not really a level of service. And you've used different terms. You've used scheduler, profile, and those kinds of things. And I think those are more apt for what you're talking about. Because what we haven't talked about tonight in this presentation is really what this means in terms of our level of service for what our stormwater capacity is. I looked through the accompanying documentation, and I saw in there that we're aiming to be able to support 2-year and 10-year events, storm events. So there are two different things there. If you could explain what the difference between a 2- and 10-year event is, and maybe it's in different part of town or that kind of stuff. But really what I want to get at is just being crystal clear with everybody that the type of event we saw last year was much more than even a 10-year event, right? So we're, with this $160 million worth of capital projects over the next 25 years, we're not even trying to get to that point. What we will do might make things fail less or maybe fail more gracefully, but we're not aiming to support or to be able to handle those types of events. It's the 2-year and the 10-year events, which are much more frequent, the kind of stuff we normally have and normally expect, that we even have trouble with today.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember. So the 2-year storm, think of that as a storm that has a 1% chance of happening every 50 years, or a 2% chance of happening. The 10-year storm happens potentially 10% of the year. I'm doing a poor job explaining that. 2-year storm is a big, or 10-year storm is a big storm. The storm that we had last June was in excess of a 100-year storm. And no, the city does not design for records. The city does not mitigate records. The numbers that we presented here say 160 million. Of that, 74 million was deferred maintenance. We have $1 billion infrastructure set out there that is not receiving the attention that it needs. So the deferred maintenance truly is fixing our the stuff that we already have. The capital, when we think of capital, the map wasn't in this presentation. It was in the last one I gave. It was how do we responsibly develop as the city grows. So when you look at our West Billings, we have subdivisions that are way outside the city's existing pipe storm system or any dedicated city facility. We as a city ran out water to those communities. We ran out sewer. We did not run out storm drain. And this is that portion of it. All of those do help with the big 100-year storms. Granted, if it rains 4 inches, that system fills up fast, the ponds fill up fast, the pipe fills up fast, but it's not meaningless. The difference between a 10-year storm, say that's 2.7 inches of rain in a day. The 100-year storm is 3.38 inches of rain in a day. So it is a substantial percentage of it, but really it is the story of the deferred maintenance, responsibly developing, and then also there was the flood mitigation of the Yellowstone River, and then our water quality. Water quality is a big part. Everything that falls down the storm drain today goes to the river untreated, minus new subdivisions, which fall under new permit, new requirements. But the bulk of our city, everything that goes to the river is untreated, and it's getting ahead of that. It's addressing that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw.
Just a couple comments. I just want to express my thanks. I know you guys have been working on this a long time. A ton of work went into this. Please hear me say thank you, that this is really obviously important for our community, and I'm very grateful. Also, thank you to the Budget and Finance Committee. I feel like this is an example of it working great, I think. I have a lot of confidence that 5 of us sat down around a table and really delved into these details, and so to see that recommendation, I just really appreciate it. So a lot of hard work from different groups, and thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Kulik? Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. As most of you know, I'm not real excited about the large expenses, but I do see a need to tackle a lot of this in the deferred maintenance. So I got a couple of questions on on several of these items. So one of it would be, as Tom Repsis already has talked about, is the capacity and the level of service that we're, really selling this to the residents for, and that's why they're going to be paying almost 15% every year for the next, 10 years or more. And so I think the mayor mentioned this too, and is, how do we make sure the public are aware that we're not just, increasing their fees and not give them anything different. And so I couldn't tell you if sudden floods out on the west end, I would never hear about it, would not know about it unless it came to council and said, hey, this thing failed. And so is there maps that people can look at and say, well, this level of this town is up to that level of 2 to 10 year service. We're working on this level here. Is there some things that we can actually to show the public that, hey, we've brought this level of service up from it floods every time it rains, it floods, to now it's working well and things like that. So those are the kind of things I think if we're going to move forward with something like that, we really need to show the public that we're doing. Is there a plan to make sure that we really emphasize that type of investment in what it's been doing for community?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, that is our vision. With our system now really being digitized in the GIS network, we do plan to roll out much more. Everything's going to be data-driven decisions, data-driven outreach to the public is what we envision. As people, even complaint tracking. If somebody has a complaint, you can log on, you can put a pin in our GIS network, and then we're able to develop heat maps for this sort of stuff. We already have a layer that we see on our side of what the condition is of the infrastructure. It was that map, you probably don't remember, last October. It was all these red and yellow and orange areas. That was the condition of the system. And as we TV our whole system and then start to fix it, we're able to change that map, and that helps. We have weather stations that we're putting up throughout town. We already have 7 weather stations, and we're trying to get more. Heights got a big rainstorm, I guess, this week or maybe last week. Didn't rain too hard at my house, right? And my mom calls me, she's like, it's really raining. I'm like, great. And so the more data we have, yes, we're able to communicate to the public, interface with the public, and address those concerns.
Okay, thank you. And then the mayor asked this question about the complexity at different levels of service. So let me ask you this, because you say we're not doing it now, which makes sense. But when would you expect that to come back to council? Next year with some different complexities? Or are we talking 5, 10 years down the road that would be introduced?
So thank you, Councilmember. The rate resolution comes to council every year, and we want to be able to continue to justify those rates. The resolution I believe you'll be seeing on June 10th, and I think this applies to other utilities, we take a 5-year look, and every 5 years we kind of, what's the state, where are we at? And I think that's a decent time frame to reevaluate, continue to reevaluate. We don't want to overpromise. We don't want to overcollect, right? That was one thing that our rate consultant warned us about early, is not overcollecting. This will be a continual process, yes.
Okay, so 5 years before we probably see anything meaningful, but probably before that, you may be talking to us about it, bringing back to work sessions as far as what some of the complexities we could look at introducing.
Yes, Councilmember, I always don't get my way here, but I would talk to you about stormwater every day if I could. The advisory committee, the stormwater advisory committee member process, I thought was very nice. And I mentioned to Councilmember Gulick, I would love for that to be a continual, and I know that probably isn't realistic, but yes, this is something that we want to, it's not a big program now. And we want to build it to an actual program, to where we have conversations often about this.
Okay, and then in the capital planning's amount of $103 million now, is there anything in there that's going to help alleviate the just capture and transfer, but to actually capture, retain and hold, and so it doesn't have to go downstream? Is that kind of project going to be included in that?
Yes, Councilmember, thank you. So the revised number, 83 million instead of 103.
Okay.
Yes, the improvement projects that we plan, it's a combination of conventional piping. Detention ponds are a great opportunity. Regional detention ponds, green infrastructure, public-private partnerships with subdivisions, subdividers, landowners, to help capitalize our dollars with their requirements or their money. Our own city parks. How do we combine infrastructure and combine city services? And I think stormwater parks have a beautiful nexus. So that 83 million isn't, there's a bunch of projects there. And when we get into that project, we can start to look at, all right, how do we really build this, or what does this really look like? And it is a whole opportunity for pipe, ponds, ditches, swales, drains, and park improvements.
Okay, and the last thing, and I would like to, because you kind of asked about this, is on the system development fees. My preference would be to get it out as soon as possible. So if it's a mid-year introduction, that would be my preference to see it mid-year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I think that's a great idea of teaming with parks. And if you'll put up 10, 12 million bucks, we'll give you a nice concrete retaining pond in South Park that you can use once every 100 years or so, to your heart's content. Councilmember Owen, did you have anything for us?
No, Mayor, really do want to echo the commendations of Public Works across the board. They have been to the Budget and Finance Committee many times, and I appreciate the collaboration in getting us to this point, even though it is, as Councilmember Neese noted, a significant increase. It's, I think, the right thing for us to do. So really just want to say gratitude for all the hard work.
Thank you. Councilmember Joy, anything?
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to go to the slide of the map that you have that looks like Central Avenue with some, it looks like the baseball fields from Central Avenue. Anyway, I wanted you to go into just a little bit more detail about how you arrived at the 97% confidence from your further work on this, and just a little bit, so that if someone were looking at this, what would they actually, how is that showing us impervious surface? That's what I kind of wanted to ask you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. So, yeah, the exhibit that you're looking at right now. So it started with a flight to the city. The city flies the city every so years, and it gets an image, a really crisp image. And this technology has really just advanced and exploded over the past 4 or 5 years. So you start with a really crisp image, and then there's a couple things you can do. You can start to trace out individual properties, or in this case, we contracted with a machine learning company, AI company out of Canada, sent them our crisp image and said, measure up all these surfaces. And the categories you can see on the right-hand side, those are all the things that computer measured. And then that company sends it back to us, and they give us a set grid. And our IT department then says, okay, now let's measure these up by hand. Not the whole city, but a certain like 10% of it. And so they measured it up, and they verified it. And then we send that back to that company in Canada that retrains their machine, and we get this 97% confidence level. One thing to note, there is the yellow lines. Those are property lines that we get from Yellowstone County. That's not a GIS layer that we own as a city. We know that there's a slight shift in that. So then we went again and measured up the 10 largest commercial properties by hand to verify that we had the correct data.
That's really impressive. Very good. And I just wanted to make sure that I understood correctly. On the slide where you talk about your elliptical 15% per year increase, that is what the Budget and Finance Committee is recommending to council?
Councilmember, no, they did not select that as a recommended rate profile. They selected the Budget and Finance Committee rate profile that they selected last October is what they also endorsed this year.
The same one as
the same one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Councilor Rasmussen?
Just so to put nerd speak into human speak, to answer Councilman Rupsis's kind of visual about a 2-year, 10-year, 100-year event. The 2-year is about 1.5 inches over 24 hours. The 10-year is 2.3 inches over 24 hours, and the 100-year is like 3.3 inches over 24 hours. So, I mean, there's all kinds of hydrograph data and whatnot, but for the common person looking in the rain gauge, like that's what you see and that's what you feel for a 2-year and a 10-year. To clarify that, or to give you some visualization on that. The only thing I'd echo the same. I mean, this has been needed in the city of Billings for a long, long time, and I'm happy that we are where we are. Tyler has done a tremendous job in building this out and being creative and being open to commentary from the development community. I'll tell you, as a developer in this community, stormwater is the biggest challenge and one of the biggest cost drivers, whether you're doing a commercial development or residential development. It is one of the most challenging things to try to find solutions for, particularly on the west end and the heights, because our infrastructure just isn't there. So starting to tackle this and create a actual utility that can help encourage development and give us some options for dealing with stormwater is going to drive down the cost of doing business with the city of Billings over time. And so this is a great step forward. Appreciate the effort and happy that this is moving forward. I think this is a big step for us as a city.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we'll go to public comment at this point, and then we can come back to council in case there's any final questions or comments. This is an opportunity for public comment on this item. If you would like to, please come to the podium, or if you're online, put up your little yellow hand. And we'll see if there's any public comment on the proposed stormwater rate change and SDFs, et cetera. And Debbie?
Just want to introduce, those are our rate consultants up there.
Oh, okay, I was very good. Or I was curious.
Yeah.
It's okay. Welcome, rate people. Did you have any questions? I'm assuming not, but no one is coming forward, so we'll close the public comment period. Back to council. You've heard what the schedule is. This will be coming forward for formal adoption. Is there anything else for staff before we move on to the Public Works budget discussion? No one is indicating, so thank you very much, stormwater warriors out there. Back to Public Works for budget discussion. And looks like Debbie is the designated budgeter.
For just a couple minutes, and then Jen's going to take over. The presentation. So I'll start with a couple things. One is, it is Public Works Week. So there's less excitement from 10 of you than there is from one, but I appreciate the excitement there. And we will always do budget and anything hard from now on Public Works Week, because Councilmember Aspenlander said he's going to give us a softball here. So also, while getting that pulled up, I want to introduce some of the team. The rest is going to come in here tonight. Sarah Lane is our Fiscal Services Manager, so she'll be here to answer questions if there's any. Scott Emmerich is the head of our DNC, which is distribution and collection, your pipes, basically. Lewis Ingalls is utilities, which is your water plant, wastewater plant. Derek Miller, streets, stormwater, street signals, all of that. Jennifer DeRay, you guys have met her a couple times. And we will have Kyle Foreman, who you all know, is going to come in here, and Boris Krizak will be here tonight. So any questions, we should have the team here to answer them. And this doesn't work, right? Oh, okay.
And council, the Public Works budget starts at page 155 of your budget book.
So most of you have seen, no, I don't think it is. Okay, try it. Okay. Most of you have seen this before, so we'll go pretty quick through these first few slides. But that is the team. Like I said, Mac is out of town tonight and couldn't be here, but the rest of them will be available for any kind of questions. Public Works has about 35 facilities, and we're managing about $7.5 billion of assets. So I know that our budget looks big, and I know we always say we need more, but it really is a pretty large system, and we're trying to not do what we did on storm and end up with deferred maintenance. We're trying to keep up on it and be responsible with that infrastructure that we've been entrusted. We have about 290 full-time staff, and I'll go through some of the things that we have done. Is this me or you? I'll go through some of the things that we've done here over the last year, just some highlights. Our core services, I just mentioned them as we went through all this and I introduced everybody. Those are our core services. If you don't know we're here, it means we're doing our job well. If you know we're there, it probably means it's infrastructure and something went wrong. So we do a lot of community engagement. As most of you know, we hired an outreach facilitator a couple of years ago, and our presence has grown exponentially. Accountants and engineers are not very good at some of this, but our outreach person really is. So if you watch our Facebook and you watch some of these different events, like this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we have 2 open houses. That sort of thing has just been great to engage with our community. So you'll see all the things we did in the last year. We did the Strawberry Festival. We do a lot of STEM a lot of STEM classes. And you've seen most of those things, I'm sure. Some of the big projects that we completed this year, Brewington, well, I'm not going to go through all of them. The Inner Belt Loop, I'm going to go through the highlighted ones. Really exciting. Next month, we'll have a ribbon cutting on that, June 6th. We're 99% sure we're going to be able to open the road that day. So June 6th should be pretty exciting. The Espera streets, we had a lot of discussions about those last year, but we did get some projects done in that area. Maloney Road was a great project. For those of you that have been down in that part of the city, it is a really great project. It turned out well. We have a new signal at 48th and Grand. Again, for those of you that travel that way, probably noticed that. We were able to do some traffic calming projects. We've got a lot of projects that increased our sidewalks, our safe routes to schools, some of those things. So we have had some big projects this year. Another page of projects. The composting, again, we're not quite done yet, but I know we've talked about that one for a long time. We waited months and months and months for a mixer to come in. We finally got our mixer, hooked everything up, and next month we should be able to turn on the composting. So we're excited to see how that goes. And we do have our compliance flare now. A lot of you probably remember last year we kind of were up against some regulatory deadlines to get the compliance flare in. We do have that in and operational now. So. And down at the bottom, nutrient recovery, we're always looking at different ways that we can make use of some of the things that we produce. And so we have some nutrient recovery projects going on at the wastewater plant. This, we've already talked about the composting. The methane, again, a project that you're all very familiar with, but we did capture about 2,600, enough methane to power 2,600 homes for a year. So that's a great number. Solar-powered lights at Shiloh Conservation Area. I know there's only a couple, but that really helps us to figure out, can we use solar power? In the dead of winter, when we only have a few hours light, is there enough solar to keep the lights on at night? So we had a great couple of experiments there. You'll probably see us use solar more often, I think. See if Derek's nodding at me or saying no, but I think we really like the solar there. And a route optimization. This has been a long time coming. Route optimization is huge, and I know you guys have seen the effects of it a little bit. All new routes for all our drivers. It was time to do it. It was really interesting to see. If you have questions about it, Kyle loves to talk about it. But that was a great process to get us to a route optimization, again, using those funds that we're entrusted with to do more every year. And we are on track to recycle over 500,000 pounds of cardboard. We're gonna do better next year. That's still a little bit on the light side for what we'd like to see. But with some outreach this year, we hope to get a little bit better there. Jen's gonna do a couple slides here and then go into numbers.
All right, we just want to talk really quickly about asset management. It's been a couple years since we talked about that. We started these initiatives, I think in FY22 with a consultant. And really what it's about is getting us to do our job better than what we do now. So we've managed assets in public works since the beginning of time. This helps us do it better by using our data. Actually collecting the data is the first part, making sure we're collecting the right data, and then using it as effectively and efficiently as we can. We've used this a couple years now on the CIP. That's how we prioritize our projects. It's all data driven for that approach. And we just completed an asset management plan for water mains, which was just our first one. And this is a way that we have all of the information that we need on water mains in one place. So this is coming in from various sources, and what's on this slide is just a sample of it. We have different things like pipe type, etc. And what we're really proud of is that we are the first people in the United States to do an electronic dynamically updated AMP is what it's called. So Canada, Europe, they've done them, but first in the United States. So we're pretty happy about that, and we just have about 200 more assets to do, so. So now the exciting part, like Debbie said, the numbers. I know that's what everyone likes. So our budget proposed for FY25 is $238.8 million, an increase of about $86.3 million over the previous year. And we will get to why those increases are in there in just a few slides. And then budgeted revenues are $196.1 million for FY25. So for our expenses, our largest expense in Public Works is always capital. This year it's $138.8 million, or 58% of our budget. But the other part of that is the debt service at 6%, or $14.7 million, because that debt service is really for previous capital projects. So you can consider 64% of our budget is capital. The interfund transfers is mostly actually another debt service. We transfer $1 million from storm to debt service to pay off. We have 2 bond issues there. And then there's the rest of those interfund transfers are to the general fund for the BOC land. Personnel is different in Public Works than I think every other department in the city in that it's our lowest expense. So for us, it's $27.8 million for FY25, or 12% of our budget. And our operating and maintenance expenses are $55.9 million for FY25. Then we break our revenues into 7 categories. The largest for Public Works is always going to be our charges for services. That's your water, wastewater, solid waste, and then we also have some other internal charges for services. Special assessments are 13%, so that would include your street maintenance district assessments, street light assessments, and your no longer storm assessments. So what am I missing? Is that it? I think that's it for this next year. Debt proceeds are up this year, $43.4 million. $40 million of that is for the second issue on the West End project, and the remainder is the bonds that we sell for SIDs and sidewalk projects. We have $13.8 million of grants programmed, so those are known grants that we have right now that we know will be coming, primarily ARPA and FEMA grants. Interest earnings are just 2% of our budget at $3.2 million. Intergovernmental at $5 million, that is primarily your gas tax revenues right there. And then just a small amount, $230,000 for licenses and permits. This slide just has all of our different funds, each one so that it's broke down with expenses and revenues. That part that you see in yellow is what we're either accumulating in cash or using in cash. So water, wastewater, solid waste, and storm and gas tax, it looks like, are the funds that we're going to be using up reserves for known capital projects. So we're not dipping below our reserve levels. That's just using up as we had planned before. So this shows you the major change here in our budget is capital. So capital increased by $81.3 million. The main shift was moving the reservoir forward. It was originally, I think, in the FY23 budget. Never did get into the FY24 budget. Now we're moving it into the FY25 budget, and I'm 99% confident that it will go this year. So that is in the FY25 budget, and our biggest change is there in the capital. Personnel is just a minor $391,000 change. O&M, which I'll show you on the next slide, I think is $6.4 million. Debt service actually went down a little bit, and then interfund transfers up for those BOC transfers. This slide you've seen before. Andy had it in his, so I won't go through it in detail. Just the one number I'd like you to keep in mind is that materials cost index. You see it was 26.5% at one point. It's down to 7.4%, which is great news, but that's still high. And that's what's driving a lot of what we're seeing in increased needs in Public Works. For personnel, we have right now 289 people. We added 1 person mid-year for a federal ELDT program that we have to have in order to be able to keep our CDL drivers, or actually hire CDL drivers and have them on the road. So we have no requested additions in FY25, none that we asked for and were cut. We have asked for none in the FY25 budget. I won't go through all the changes on this slide, but some of the main things that I'll point out is we are asking for automated pavement condition index collection. So historically, we've done that with seasonals. We don't get very far very fast with that, and we have advanced so much in that field that there's automated ways to collect that now. And back to the asset management, we need that data in order to be able to really make the decisions on the other end of it. So we are including that. The street traffic charges for storm services, that is an increase due to the increase in the storm program. So everything that streets does comes out of their budget, and then it just charges back to storm. So it's really not an increase in the overall public works budget. It's just going from one fund to another. Sorry if I made your head spin on that. And then a couple others, landfill closure, post-closure costs, federal requirement that we have to have. We fund a trust with this money. We do it every year, but those costs have gone up in the last couple of years, so we're funding that. The water meter budget is purely inflationary number. It's again, those materials and parts. The motor vehicle parts and labor is $942,000. That is definitely, that materials cost index. Parts for vehicles have gone through the roof, so we're really seeing it there. And then property and liability insurance of $713,000. We actually, this is our second year that we've received huge increases in property and liability insurance. So I think in the last 2 years, it's been a $1.5 million increase, and huge numbers there. And then general fund and internal service cost allocations to public works have increased by $365,000. Again, this is the second year of a pretty big increase there too. I'm not going to go through the capital projects in the FY25 budget. We just included it in the presentation in case anybody had questions or needed a reminder of what's in the budget for FY25. So this slide shows the primary regular capital projects, and then this one has the annual capital programs, and we can sure go back to it at the end if you do have questions. So now we get to the rate increases. So for street maintenance districts, we have 2 districts, as most of you know. The first one is the downtown district. It is only for additional sweeping and snow removal that we do, or snow hauling in the area. And then District 2 is the entire city of Billings. So both districts together generate $15.9 million. We are asking for a 6.6% increase in street maintenance District 2. And this will basically help us stay in line with our current service levels and fund the additional items that council asked us to fund in the CIP, which includes the paver funding and the traffic calming projects increase. So if you look at our increase, about 4% of that is inflationary. The other 2.6% is for those capital increases. And then in SMD 1, we're only asking for a 1.6% increase because we've had very little snow years, and we have some excess reserves in SMD 1 that we'll be using up. So right now, the average residential homeowner pays $198.04. This would increase by $13.07 to $211.11 per year. So the chart on the right shows you what the breakdown or the comparison is for the various cities in Montana. Bozeman, and that does include arterial fees, because we remember, I think it was 2 years ago, we incorporated the arterial fee into the street maintenance district fee. So Bozeman has still their arterial fee, and they pay $445 on average a year. We're at $211.11. And then Helena, that was their current year number. I'm not sure if they're going to increase, but they're just below us. And then Kalispell and Great Falls are down there a bit. So thankfully, we don't have any big changes proposed for solid waste this year. So it's just straight inflationary rate increases is what we're asking for. No programmatic changes in solid waste. So we're requesting a 4.3% overall increase for residential collection and a 4.2% for commercial, 6% for roll-off. The residential 96-gallon container right now is $14.50 or $13.90 a month, and that would go to $14.50. So it's a 60-cent increase, and just a reminder that that includes 1 black barrel, up to 2 green barrel, and unlimited cardboard collection once a month. The landfill fees, we're proposing an increase of 6.9%. Billings rate would increase to $27.80 per ton. The outside Billings rate, so anywhere else in Montana, is 1.5 times higher than that, and then the out-of-state rate is 2 times the Billings rate, just to be consistent with what council has put in place in previous years. So these charts here show the comparison for your residential collection and your landfill fees. Residential collection, we're starting to creep up there, but we are still at the bottom of all the cities that we surveyed for residential collection. And then Bozeman is now lower than us for our proposed landfill fee per ton. The out-of-state and the non-city rates are still up there a little bit, but then you look at Sheridan at $120.79, and you can see why we get some of those Wyoming customers wanting to come to our landfill. Water and wastewater are always approved on a 2-year basis, so we did that last year, so you won't be seeing any increases this year for water and wastewater, but I wanted to show them here so you have the full picture. The one thing you will see is Heights Water District change. We did recalculate that rate, and we'll be bringing that to you, I think on the June 10th council meeting, to change that rate to $3.04, and that was due to delay of the West End project, so we had to decrease their rate. And same with the wastewater side. The only thing that you will see on the wastewater rates is a one-time SDF from Phillips 66, as they want to increase the capacity from when they paid their SDF before. So the total residential impact for all of our fees is shown here. So overall, on the annual property tax statement, storm comes off. So that means the total assessments are now $46.53 per year lower on the annual property tax statement. For the utility bill, storm goes on that, and so the average residential homeowner will increase by $13.40 per month. If you annualize our utility bill, it comes out to be $114.24 per year increase for all of our services, or that equates to $9.52 per month. And this just has, we like to show you where we are for all of our different services on one slide. It's just a good visual to see how we compare to other cities. I'm tagging out.
I know that seemed like the fun part, but now we're going to talk about challenges. So it's going to get really exciting here. Streetlights, we've talked about this a couple of times, and we just haven't had the resources to be able to figure out a solution to this. So this is the year of figuring out streetlights. So we'll be back at some point this year to talk about what we're going to do. As most of you know, we have streetlight districts all over the city. All lights are paid for by property owners, with the exception of some intersection lights, but by and large, paid for by property owners. And the way the districts were created, we cannot replace those. We can just maintain the system and operate it. So we have to find a way to start replacing these streetlight districts that are 100 years old. I don't know if they're 100. Do we have any 100? Maybe along there. Anyway, so we have problems. We need to fix them. We need to find a funding solution for that. And we'll be back to talk about that this year. We don't have a solution yet. Composting, as I said, we're starting that up in June. We think we know what our compost is going to look like, but compost is always different than what you think. We're going to use the biosolids. We're going to use our green waste and see how it looks. So kind of dialing in that quality of our compost will be something we do this year. Initially, we are going to just use it as cover at our landfill. So we're not going to sell it. We're not doing any public sales yet, but we're just going to use it out at the landfill for the most part. As I said, there's potential issues here. PFAS is a big one that you're going to see on another slide. PFAS is a problem. It's called a forever chemical, and it's starting to be regulated by the federal government. And compost tends to have a lot of PFAS in it. So a lot of people that have compost and are using compost, they're finding they're going to see PFAS show up in more and more places. So we're going to hold off on that and kind of let everything get figured out before we start selling our compost and putting it in parks and other public places. So we have a need for it as daily cover. We're going to use it for daily cover, and we're just going to go that way for the next foreseeable future. Wastewater regulations, I'll just go to PFAS. It's the last one on there. But again, we have the potential to have to deal with PFAS in our wastewater. So to date, we've had very, very small hits of PFAS. Most of the time it's non-detect. It's possible we won't have issues, but it doesn't take much to become a big issue quickly. So, and the only way to treat it is basically a water plant on the end of your wastewater plant. Which is also the problem with the nutrients, which are the first ones listed there. We are working, you guys got in your Friday packet, which I'm sure you've all, or the Friday Weekly, you've all read that about the nutrient issue and the public hearing in June. If we do not get the nutrients to come out the way we need it to through the DEQ permits that we're getting, that could be an $80 to $100 million issue at our wastewater plant. So we are very concerned about that. We're spending a lot of time. Lewis is in meetings multiple times a week and dealing with this as much as he can to try to get ahead of this. And then also the Yellowstone is listed as an impaired, well, I don't know, you could probably explain it better, but we've done a lot of testing on the Yellowstone, and there are ways that we think, even if the nutrients come in the way we think they might, we kind of have a plan with the Yellowstone River. So a lot going on with the wastewater regulations, but you might hear some things from us. We are hoping we don't come to you with an $80 or $100 million ask at the wastewater plant. That's what we're trying to avoid. The Heights Water District, most of you have heard that they voted to investigate potential consolidation per the state law that was put in place last year. Was it just last year? I think it was. So we have an RFP that went out, and consultants are responding to that RFP. We will have a 50-50 split to do that study, and then at that point, we will make some recommendation to the City Council and to the Heights Water District about whether consolidation is in the best interests of our citizens. The West End, we've talked about that a little bit. The water treatment plant is under construction. Anybody that's been out there can see there it's moving, so we're pretty excited to actually be underway on that water plant. The reservoir contractor is under contract. The design is underway. It's just not completed yet. So as soon as we get that finalized, we'll be starting on the reservoir as well. The diversion structure, as most of you know, we did get FEMA funding for that, but we're waiting for FEMA to approve it at the federal level, and then we'll be able to start on that. But we did get $3.5, almost $4 million on that project. And I put down here potential cost increase. You guys have seen the materials increases. You saw the construction costs go up so much the last several years. We have done our best to bring this in on the numbers that we've told you, but there's a potential that we're gonna be able to need to come back and ask for a little bit more money on that. So we'll keep you posted on that as the design is finalized and the contractor gives us numbers, but we're still hopeful that we can get pretty close to that original number. Lead services, anybody, I think we talked about this last year. I don't know if any of you remember that, but we are completely done with our public side lead services. So that was a huge project. Both engineering and DNC have worked hard on that for years. So the lead services are out other than on the private side. The unfortunate thing is EPA is, we believe they're coming back with a new rule that says the city is responsible to pay for and construct the lead services on the private side. So that could be a really big dollar for us, and it could be difficult because you're digging under houses and porches and trees and all kinds of things on private property. So again, we're active at a national level trying to get the EPA to look at a different way to deal with those. We will keep you posted on that, especially if it ends up that we have to replace all those and pay for those ourselves. Paved alleys, as you know, we have a paver program, and you have supported that for years and are funding it at a level that we're going to be able to take care of our roads. However, alleys have never been a part of that, and a lot of our alleys are at the end of their life. We are looking at proposing a way to fund those alleys, the rebuild of those alleys, and we'll bring those to you, that plan to you this year as well. This to-do list is getting really long. I'm wondering how many more slides we have. Sidewalk funding. We've talked about both sidewalk funding and we've talked about the gravel streets and the non-maintainable as well. So I'm going to kind of jump through these two slides pretty quickly, but we currently have policies in place for the gravel streets, the non-maintainables, and the sidewalk that say what the city pays for and what property owners pay for. We've had enough comments from city council members on different projects that we think it's time to revisit those. So we'll bring those to you this year to have a discussion about funding levels and contribution on both of those projects. Jennifer did put some numbers on this one, but we'll be back to talk about it. Obviously, if we're going to contribute more to sidewalks, it needs to come out of SMDs or gas tax or those funds that currently are allocated to other projects. The transportation plan, we've talked about a lot. We talked about it at our retreat, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. We are starting on it. We had meetings. We're working on I think we're on the scope of work right now. And we will be completing that probably not in this fiscal year, but close to it as much as we can. And the SDF, we did include it. So it's basically an impact fee for transportation. We need to review that. We did add a cost to do that in this fiscal year, but it won't be done until the end of the year because as you've seen, we've got a lot going on and we'll be able to focus on that probably next spring. And that is Public Works. And you guys probably saw Kyle and Boris joined us, so they're ready to answer questions as well.
Very good. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you to your whole team. As always, great job, very comprehensive and informative. I feel like we should have put everybody in our community to force them to sit here and just listen to that, and they would learn so much about how their community works. But I don't think we can do that. Hopefully they'll watch. Questions for staff. We'll start here. Councilmember Kennedy.
Debbie or Jan, out on the west end, as we're going to do lights by Costco, and they're going to do the lighting project, and it's a lighting signal district or whatever. We have some of the property that's in the county, and some of it's in the city. And the county land that's undeveloped will eventually, when they come in, they will have to pay for the, they will have to pay for it. But when they come in, they'll pay just their portion of what it is today. How do we recoup, if everyone else is paying the interest on it for all those years until they develop, how do we recoup the interest on their portion of it?
So, Councilmember Kennedy, we do have things in place during annexation that we can charge today's cost for those things. And that's one of the things that we're talking about with the transportation system development fee, which is a little bit different. But in this particular case, when they annex that parcel that you're talking about by Gable and 32nd, I think is what your Gable and Zoo right there, they will have to pay whatever cost it would be to put in that signal as of that day is probably depending on the time. If they come in this year, it'll be pretty close. If they come in 10 years from now, then we can escalate those costs.
The only problem with that is they're going to get the benefit of it at a cost years from now of what it was when it first went in. So if someone else had to come in and pay for a portion of it and paid the interest, then they're going to pay a higher mark than the person that doesn't come into it until a later date, 10 years, 20 years from now. So how do we recoup that as a fairness?
So when people annex, we can charge them whatever we want. Annexation is one of the times that we don't have a lot of rules.
Okay.
So we can look at what it costs. We can look at escalators over whatever that time frame was, and we can charge that person whatever contribution they would have had, escalated to today's costs or whenever they come in.
Okay. Would you look at that area and see if we can do that? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Aspenleiter, Councilor Tidswell, Councilor Boyack.
Don't run away, Debbie. Who knows about cardboard? Anybody?
Kyle's here.
So I know it's not been a long time, but can you give us some educated swag about what is, by picking up this cardboard, have we generated enough money to cover our costs? Have we made any money? Have we lost money? Question.
No, no, and no, no. So it's, if you remember, it's $75 a ton to get rid of that stuff. So on? It is on, okay. So no, it's, we're not making any money, but, you know, we're keeping it out of the landfill, so.
Are we breaking even?
Probably not. I mean, we're 8, 7, 9 months, almost a year into that program now, so we haven't really, I haven't like done a deep dive into that, but to just off the top of my head, no.
Okay, Wyndham Mormont, go ahead. So of all the complaints I've been getting lately, it's about people not picking up the cardboard, and what they found out, somebody followed one of them, the people. The person drove up and looked down the street and said, I didn't see anything, and kept on going.
Yep, that's a problem.
Rather than driving around.
That's a problem that we're dealing with, and we're dealing with that as those complaints come into the office.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. Debbie, wonder if you could talk about our traffic calming. Last year, we had $50,000 in the budget, and I presume we spent that. This year, we've got $100,000. What are we spending it on? What are we spending it on last year? What are we spending on this year?
So the reason that we put 50,000 was because we knew it would take us the majority of the year to kind of come up with a program. So we did spend a lot of time this year, not only coming up with a policy of what type of traffic calming is appropriate for different roads, what can we maintain, what does everyone else, you know, the fire want to use, that sort of thing. So we worked on the policy, and then we also prioritized locations that we know have documented speeding problems. So now that we've got the policy and we have the list, we've started knocking off some of those. Some of the ones we did were some lower cost ones, like 22nd. So you saw some of the pop-up traffic circles that we used there. I'm trying to think of the other ones that we've done. And Mac isn't here tonight, so I might have to send you some information on the specifics of how that 50,000 was spent. But we spent a lot of the year getting the priority list put together. We did a lot of speed studies, went back and figured out where we had issues. So a lot of internal staff time.
And this coming year, do you know anything off the top of your head that we're targeting, or?
I have a list of priority projects I can send you.
Thank you.
I don't have them off the top of my head, though.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw. Councilmember Gulick. Councilmember Neese.
No, not this time.
Thank you, Councilmember Owen.
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Joy.
Thank you. I think this is for Director Melling. It's kind of a really big picture question. Those are the kinds I know that aren't very easy to answer, but when you're talking about transportation plan and how that's moving forward, how are you looking this? Is this going to be just a plan about roads? And you can kind of tell by the hint in my voice that I don't think it should be just about roads, but tell us what the transportation plan, big picture, what it is that we want to accomplish with this, and how this makes our city more resilient or more sustainable. And can you speak to that just a little bit? Thank you.
I can. So the transportation, we're calling it a master plan or a strategic plan, and that's really what it is, to figure out strategically where different modes of transportation should be in our community, how they get from one part of the community to the other, what that design criteria for those facilities look like. So everything from cars to bikes to pedestrians and other modes of transportation. Transit is a big part of it as well. And what we're looking at is not every street has to serve every user. If you're a biker, you might feel more comfortable on a road that maybe doesn't serve as many cars, but it's more comfortable for a bike. Same thing with pedestrians. Fewer pedestrian vehicle conflict points, fewer accidents, more comfort. So what we'll look at is where should pedestrians be, where should bikes be, where should cars be, and how do we design to create an environment so all of those modes of transportation are effective, efficient, and comfortable. Does that help? Okay.
Hey, Debbie, while you're there, and maybe Jennifer can address this, but a couple years ago, we established a fairly modest snow plowing budget, $200,000 a year. We've been fortunate not to have any snow. I was less fortunate. We'd like more snow. But what happens with those dollars when they're not used? Do they accumulate? Do they get used for other dollars? How do we handle those good years, but also on the deficit years where we might go over budget? What would the impacts be there? So, Jennifer.
So Mayor and Council, what we do is we have all of that money in Public Works Street Maintenance District 2 budget. And it's about $445,000 annually is what that is. So each year we look at that and make sure that we have $445,000 for the next year. And really what that does is make sure that we offset our future year rate increases with any that we didn't have to use on snow. But it wouldn't make sense to grow that each year so that we ended up with, 1.5 million if we had 3 good years.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilor Rapslider?
And this is more of a comment, and maybe it's something Councilwoman Shaw with the Legislative Committee can look at. And Debbie was very politically correct and polite about the nutrient issues and the things that we face. And I hope that we take a very aggressive stance as a city with the Legislative Committee and our local legislators. That is something that is... We have an administration that's absolutely tone deaf and a DEQ director that refuses to listen to logic and the reason of not just the cities, but also industry. And the only way that we're going to get away from numeric standards is to have the legislature restrict their ability to implement that at this point in time. So I would encourage our legislative committee to work with our lobbyists, to encourage the EQC interim committee to block any kind of rule until it can be dealt with in the 2025 legislative committee or the legislative session. Functionally, they can do that. This is something that will put tremendous burden on our city, on our users, and our less fortunate ratepayers. I mean, it's going to impact the low-income folks more than it is anybody else in our community, and that is an inequity that's going to come through rulemaking. And if we're not on top of that, I fear that we're going to get it jammed down our throat. And I think the only way to do it is to quit being polite about it and to start being very forceful in how we deal with that legislatively. So I'd encourage the legislative committee to really take a hard line stance and an aggressive stance with our lobbyists in looking at legislation.
Thank you very much. If we're on anything else, we'll open up for public comment and then come back to council. How about that? So this is an opportunity for public comment. Everybody here is kind of a member of the public, in case you wanted to chime in, but and I don't know if we have anybody online. Is there any public comment on the budget presentation by Public Works? No one's coming to the podium, no one's online, so we'll close the public comment period. Back to council. Council, any further questions, direction, et cetera? Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Just when I was looking over at Lewis as you were commenting on that, because I've added, anytime you said legislative changes, I put it on my list to put on a future agenda for the legislative committee. But Lewis, are you the best contact person for that? Okay, you're nodding your head. Okay, that was my question. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Shaw, just comment that the league, Montana League of Cities and Towns, Kelly Lynch would be a good contact. They've been involved with that from the beginning. Councilmember Neese?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We saw the insurance costs raised significantly for this and other departments, but I just want to ask them to take a look at this, and maybe residents are listening to this, because the insurance companies doesn't automatically lower our rates because we now are a Protection 2 class city. You have to actually call your agent. So call the agent, let them know, hey, we're now a class 2, and and as I did, and I actually got a reduction in my insurance rate. So it is something you need to actually manually do to your agent to do. So maybe we can cut some of those costs down a little bit. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for giving us all a heads up on that. Do we owe you a commission?
No, it's a freebie.
Okay, I appreciate that. Councilor Boyette.
So to back up that, I called my insurance man and he said, so? He says as long as it's not a 5, they didn't care. So some people will do and some won't.
Okay. We won't ask you to identify your insurance companies on publicly, but we'll all be asking you afterwards. Okay, anything else for, anyway, questions or direction or other commentary? I'm not seeing anything, so thanks, everybody, we appreciate it. That concludes the discussion of a regular agenda for tonight. Anything else in the way of general council discussion? Councilmember Boyette.
Just as just an observation, in my past life, we did business, we would ask department heads to give us what they needed for the next year. And we had every department give us, say, well, I need a person, I need a desk, I need something. Then the top people at the top of the corporation would make the decision what should do. So I'm concerned that we're seeing that some of the departments are saying, well, we wanted another person, but we were told not even to put it in the budget. So I'm wondering if that should be more of the council decision to say there's 35 people that all of our departments want, and for us to turn it down to 16, or to leave it to the staff to dwindle it down to 16. And then, because Councilman Gulick said, well, he may want to put a person in planning. Well, planning already said that they want a person, but they were told not to. So it's just an observation and a comment that I was wondering if we, the council, should have more input into the process of either saying, no, you can only have 16, or you should put 35 people there and wean it down to, say, 16.
That's for council, but also for Chris. I'll just ask if that's okay, Councilmember Boyette, for Chris to comment on that. I don't know that we want all of that information to go through that kind of granularity, but at least if we know what has been refused, we at least would know to potentially come back to it, I suppose. Chris, you want to comment?
So, Deputy Mayor Boyette, Mayor and Council, so a specific adjustment we tried to make this year was to show you just that, what was requested from the budget versus then what was recommended to you, which is predominantly driven by balancing a budget. I mean, been doing this now for 30 years. The driver is, what are rate adjustments that are going to be acceptable? What's going on with inflation? And how do we balance that in front of you? But I think, candidly, this year we didn't make nearly the progress I wanted to make. So we're going to drive harder at that this next year. I want you and I want the public to see what the department heads and their staffs believe that they need. That being said, I'm pretty sure you want me to present you a balanced budget as your city administrator. I don't think you want me to just say, okay, here's $600 million worth of request, get her balanced. That's very much what Andy and I are paid to do. But it is my desire that we open up more and more for the purposes of really understanding what the needs are across the organization, what is being requested in order to provide an excellent level of service. So welcome your feedback this year, and then obviously with the Budget and Finance Committee, that's a work in progress as well. This was our second year having a Budget and Finance Committee, and honestly, from a timing standpoint, I know it was very challenging for the committee, particularly the two new members, to walk into that process, us still be working on figuring out how to balance the budget and not being able to provide really a context before we started presenting particular department budgets to that committee. But that being said, you know, one of the things we want to figure out was what's the sweet spot in the timing. We've already started the process essentially right after New Year's. We don't really want to start the process next month for the budget for next year, but working through that with Budget and Finance, it is my goal for you to better understand and the public to better understand what are your department directors and their teams saying are the needs of their community to provide exceptional services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kenny and Councilmember Neeson-Gulick.
I would, just to comment on that, Chris, I think the process does need to start sooner. I think we should have a pretty good idea by fall and start the budget committee and start looking at the different areas. we have a pretty good idea after the budget is passed and you get into the new year of the same things that the departments are looking for are still going to have those same problems. So we need to see what can we do to work with them or alleviate the problems or need to cut out before it gets to us. I think our process was late this year, and so I would like to go earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Chris and Mike, I would say I actually thought this process was a little bit better than years past, and so this is a new process for you as far as doing this. I agree with what the mayor said also. There's some inconsistencies when I read the report and then look at the numbers, and I think that there needs to be some tweaks to this to make it a little bit better, but so that we know what the staff is asking, but then we know what had to be cut to do that so that we can make some adjustments if we need to. Even if you have to have, add some additional columns to what was requested, and this is what we're presenting, so that when someone's reading this, they don't think, oh, they added a new code enforcement officer, when they didn't, because that's what the budget narrative says it does, but the final doesn't. So, but overall, I thought this was better. You're right, I don't want to see a $600,000 budget. We have to whittle it down, to 400,000 or 500,000 to make it balanced. That's not something I would.
I think you mean millions.
Millions,
but okay,
sorry.
I wish.
Yeah, thousand, yeah, millions, yeah. Yeah, millions, sorry. So you're right, I don't want to see that. So I think it was a good presentation, a good start, the way you changed it. And I love it the way it goes through the budget committee first, because it gives another look at it before it comes to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gulick.
Yeah, I think having seen both the department as well as what we ultimately get is good, but having all of those changes on one sheet or two sheets or whatever it is would be helpful just to understand. But I mean, this is always just the first draft, and it's good that it's balanced, so that if we make any amendments to it, we know that if we put more money here, we got to find it from somewhere else, and so. But ultimately, it always is us. It's just that it's been handed to us, mostly. We have a version we could work with, and we can amend it from there. But yeah, I guess I'm also glad that we have this to start with as a balanced budget.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else, Council? Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Asseliner?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sorry, that was kind of a quick thought that I had. Chris, I think maybe that as we move forward and we kind of get a better feel for our cost of services, I think that could be a good way to kind of drive some of the discussion in terms of the budget. And I don't know where that process is, because it's a big process, I understand. But I think that maybe having, for utilities, that's very easy to do. For other departments, that's the difficult part, to figure out their cost of services. But that can be a way that we can see FTEs in a different light. And when you're making that link between the services that we're delivering, the excellence that we want to deliver to our customers, that cost of services might be that link between where we're at, where we want to be, and what that takes in terms of personnel and capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Asseliner.
I was just going to note, this is the fastest meeting we've had since I've been on council, so I'm going to give all the credit to Public Works for having their stuff in the same sack on Public Works Week, so thank you, Public Works.
You get some great pom-poms tonight. On that, is there any public comment on anything not on our agenda? I don't think so. Chris, you've got the last word before we adjourn.
Just a heads up for next week. So last week, we had a couple of items that were moved from the agenda until next week's meeting. So just want to let you know that this morning I had an opportunity to attend a piece of the county commissioners meeting with their department heads. So the issue of the MOU for the short-term hold facility, we got that language finalized this morning, and it's in the packet material coming to you. Bottom line is referencing attached renderings of first and second floor build-outs as being, basically what we're relying on and some language relative to kind of size and scope there. And then secondly, one lets you know that also the chip seal in the two-way conversion packet material is coming to you the same as it was. What I did add is the cash flow spreadsheet from Andy, so you could see the downtown TIF and its cash flow. I would expect when we talk about the project, we'll have some more information for you, but you'll see that packet memo essentially is the same with that additional attachment to it. So just FYI for your packet material, whether you get into it tomorrow or over this coming weekend.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. Councilor Sean?
Sorry, before you gavel us close, just let council know related to that, I sat down with Matt Blakesley, who's the executive director of Art House and the Babcock, and got some firm numbers on what they're actually looking at and what money they've already raised. So I'm going to put that into writing and send it out to everybody. So please look for that. So we'll have that information before tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.